alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim wa sadaqa rasuluhu an-nabiyyul aminul kareem. Respected audience, listeners, attendees, I am here to answer your questions. You may ask your questions.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum Hazrat. Ummid hai aap khair hoge. Hazrat, can you give an opinion or a deep message for the people who are celebrating nikah but they are involving the things which are haram in Islam, like bepardagi and using DJs and dance in their wedding functions?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nikah is a religious ceremony. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned nikah in several places in the Quran, encouraged that people should do nikah, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam has referred to nikah as his sunnah, and he has said that he who does not adopt my sunnah, enact my sunnah, then he is not from amongst me. And like that, Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam has mentioned that he who إِذَا تَزَوَّجَ الْعَبْدُ فَاسْتَكْمَلَ نِصْفَ الدِّينِ, that he who does nikah, does tazawwuj, he gets married or she gets married, then they have completed half of their religion. So nikah is a religious ceremony, and in the Hanafi fiqh, it is superior to get married, to do nikah, than to engage in solitary and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is more virtuous to get married and fulfill the rights of your marital partner, have children, etc. So the way of nikah is that there is ijab and qubul, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam advised walima after the nikah, which is to feed people, and he sallallahu alayhi wasallam practiced that himself after his own nikah, like after the nikah with Sayyidah Zainab radiyallahu anha, Mu'mineen. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam fed many people of Medina Munawwara. It was a huge walima, and he sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that awlim walaw bishat, that do walima after the night of nikah. So the nikah has been done, the next day walima should happen. If not on that day, then the day after, and then after that there is no walima. So walima, which is the sunnah walima of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, should happen the day after the nikah happened, or the day after that. That's it. After that there is no walima. That's the sunnah. As for if somebody does hold it a year after, then it's not walima, but there's no harm in feeding people and gathering people together. So we're not saying it's not permissible, we're just saying it's not the rewardable sunnah act of walima. So here, nowadays what happens in nikah ceremonies and walima, and even before that, some people for 2 weeks, some people for 1 whole week, they have certain days of celebration, they get families together. There is no harm in doing all of this. Feeding people and spending money on happiness, there is absolutely no harm in that. The harms are when people go past or surpass the boundaries of Sharia, and they do things which are haram in Islam, which, for example, as mentioned in the question, is bepardagi, which is where ghair maharim are with each other, engaging with each other, looking at each other, and then there's dancing, there's music. All of these things are forbidden acts. Outside nikah, they are forbidden during nikah as well. The only permission is for children to play the duff at a time of celebration. Allowed in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during celebrations, children were permitted to play the duff, not maulanas and ulama or old or young men and women. It is not permissible for them in the Hanafi fiqh. So walima now, or nikah now, unfortunately, is by the Muslims. They practice their walima, their nikah, in imitation of the non-Muslims. like the Bollywood celebrities, they want their nikah to be like theirs. And unfortunately, they invite performers, they invite Bhangra groups, and things like that. That which the Hindus do in their celebrations. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." He who imitates a people is from amongst them. So it is very important that when there is a nikah or walima or any type of celebration, as a Muslim, you remain within the boundaries of Sharia, and you do not imitate another people like the Hindus or the Sikhs with Bhangra music. Because if you do, there is fear that on the Day of Judgment you will rise amongst them. You will be with the polytheists, the mushrikeen, the Hindus, or with the Sikhs, rather than amongst the group of Muslims. So it is an important matter, and Muslims do need to reflect upon themselves. Unfortunately, I have seen in the Arab world, the women who wear parda, the veil, they do the niqab all throughout their lives, but on the nikah day, they expose a lot of their body features, they expose their satar, they are dancing with music, etc. The wedding dresses, unfortunately, are in imitation of the West. Why does it have to be a white wedding dress? Why does it have to have these certain features? It's all imitation of non-Muslims. Muslims should be adopting their own tradition, the tradition of the Muslims, which is to wear the jubba or the jilbab or the jalabiya, which doesn't expose their bodily features. Women go to these nikah, they have to put on so much makeup that their phone doesn't get on with face recognition. They unfortunately they wear clothes which they only wear that once and then they don't wear them anymore. What is all of this? It's a religious ceremony, just like you are going to the ijtima. How do you dress when you go to the ijtima or to the program or to the religious gathering? Nikah is the same. It is a religious gathering. You should be dressing in that same manner. That is how nikah should happen. And that is the way that pleases Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not just for the women, for the men as well, wearing really tight clothing, exposing their posterior and bodily features, and wearing ties and things like that. All these things which go against the Sharia are haram, and if they are, which most of them are, all these acts are in imitation of non-Muslims. There is a huge fear that on the Day of Judgment you rise amongst them, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." A nikah should be within the boundaries of Sharia. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. There are different traditions that people follow throughout the world. So here in England they'll be different, in India they'll be different, in the Arab world they'll be different. So based on their own traditions, they should find that which is within the boundaries of Sharia. There is no harm in fulfilling a tradition which is not Islamic, as long as it doesn't go against Sharia. There's no harm. Sayyiduna Abu Dharr Ghifari radiyallahu ta'ala, if I remember correctly, came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and there was yellow on his clothes. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, "What is this?" So he said, "Ya Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam, I just got married." So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam congratulated him and ordered him to do walima the next day. So the point of mentioning this is that he had haldi on his clothes, which is one of the traditions which we also follow. There's haldi. So that tradition is fine. There are fuqaha kiram who have said that that haldi or that turmeric was from his wife's clothing that got onto him. So they used to do it on the women, not on the men. But the rule is that whether it's done on the women or the men, as long as it is maharim touching, there's no harm in that. Okay, but if there's ghair maharim putting haldi and turmeric onto the man and ghair maharim putting it onto the women, then that's also haram. These are all haram parts of that tradition. So to uphold a tradition, there's no harm as long as it doesn't go against the Sharia. If it goes against the Sharia, then you must abstain from it. Allah give us all the tawfiq.
Is it permissible for men to wear clothing with logos where the outline of an animal is visible but no facial characteristics?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There is no harm in having a logo on your clothing which is not something that goes against the Sharia of Islam. Like Shakil has a logo on his shirt, like Hamid has a logo on his shirt. There is no harm in these logos. If there is a logo of an animal, the outline of an animal, then the rule in Sharia is that it must not be a tasweer which is forbidden by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are several ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbidding tasweer. And tasweer is mentioned, its detail is mentioned in the hadith, that a tasweer that is forbidden is of that animal which has the will to move freely according to its own will. Like the dogs and cats and lions and cheetahs and deers and insects and humans, etc. Okay? Not trees and plants. You can have pictures of them, there's no harm. Now the pictures of all these which are known as the hiss, they move on their own accord, with their own will. These animals, their face, the picture of their face, such that if you were to put that picture on the floor and you were standing up and you look towards the picture and you could differentiate between the facial features, that picture is haram in Islam. So to have a picture like that on your clothing is not permissible in Islam. If you pray namaz with that on, your namaz will be makruh tahrimi. It is wajib to repeat that namaz. If you have covered it with another garment, so it's in the inner garment, and that's been covered and it's not visible, then it's fine. Your namaz will also be fine like that. But if it's visible, then your namaz will be makruh tahrimi. So there are many logos like Polo Ralph Lauren and Lacoste and Lyle and Scott, etc. They don't. If you were to put them on the floor, you can't see the facial features, and that type of logo is permissible. Another thing you have to be careful of is that logo must not be a logo that represents a specific religion other than Islam. Like a cross, like the St. James cross on the England football shirts. It's the cross that represents Christianity. For Muslims to wear a cross is not permissible, it is haram, it's kufr, it's an act of kufr. So you must abstain from logos which are a sign of a specific religion, and you must abstain from those pictures of animals and humans whereby you can differentiate between the facial features when it's put on the floor and you are standing looking towards it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
For Muslims living in non-Muslim countries, the ruling on zabiha, specifically hand slaughter versus machine slaughter, halal for chicken and meat. The argument in USA is that some non-Barelvi scholars are saying that machine slaughter is permissible to eat since it's impossible to hand slaughter thousands of chickens in a single day.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The machine zabiha is mechanical slaughter, which is where they have a machine which slaughters the animal, and there's a cassette. In the old days, they used to put a cassette in which used to say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, and the machine would be cutting the throats of the animals. That's what we mean by machine zabiha. So Huzur Muhaddis Kabir Sheikh Diyal Mustafa Al-Qadri Amjadi Hafizahullah Ta'ala Karamallahu Ta'ala Wajhul Kareem, my Pir Murshid, he wrote a fatwa, an extensive fatwa, which is published in a book form, a small booklet, many years ago. I think about maybe 30, 40 years ago, when he traveled abroad. I think he came to the UK and he was asked this question and he wrote this book. Maulana Aftab Qasim Saab from Durban, South Africa, he has translated this and it's uploaded on his Nouri.org website. I think it's called Mechanical Slaughter. So have a read of that. The simple matter is that the condition for an animal that is ma'kulul laham, yani whose meat can be eaten by Muslims, has to be slaughtered with fulfilling a few conditions. And in them, the first condition is that the dhabih, the one doing the dhabah, is a Muslim. And that condition is not fulfilled here in a machine. That machine is not Muslim. The workers there, they don't come into that factory and say Assalamu alaikum to the machine. They don't, because it's not a Muslim, it's not a human. So it has to be a Muslim that slaughters it. Up to the extent the ulama have said that if a non-Muslim places his hand on the hand of the person doing the dhabiha, so there's a Muslim and a non-Muslim both doing the dhabah together, then it will be haram. So it must solely be a Muslim. And in the mechanical slaughter, machine is dhabiha, that machine is not a Muslim, and therefore it does not fulfill the first condition for an animal to become halal to be eaten. And therefore machini dhabiha is haram. It is not halal. That meat is the meat of a mayyit, yani deceased, which is haram for us to consume. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
When someone's spouse passes away, is the ruling on ghayr mahram and mahram?
Yeah, so this question was asked last week, and we had the answer deleted because I made a mistake in the answer. May Allah forgive me. The correct answer is that if a husband dies, then the wife is permitted to see the husband, which I did mention last week. The wife is permitted to see the husband. She is also permitted to touch the husband's body. Okay, and in fact she is also permitted to give ghusl to the husband. Okay, this is with the condition that before he passed away there was no sign of talaq or divorce or any form of separation. So as long as she was still in nikah when the husband died, she goes into the iddah period. She can still look at him, she can still touch his body, she can even give ghusl to her husband. Okay? As for the husband towards the wife, if the wife has passed away, then the husband now cannot touch his wife that has passed away. But he can look at his wife. And he can carry the coffin. He can also go into the qabr to bring her down into the grave. Okay? But he can look. There is no harm in him looking at her face and hands and feet. But he can't touch the body anymore. In case of giving ghusl, the man is not allowed to give ghusl to his wife. Okay, because he's not allowed to touch his wife. In the case of no Muslim women or maharim there to give ghusl to his wife, and he may be traveling and she's passed away somewhere where there are no Muslims, then he is not allowed to give ghusl to his wife. Instead, he will give tayammum. He will do tayammum. Okay? And because he's not a mahram anymore, therefore he will wrap material around his hands, he will strike the earth, and he will do tayammum for her. Tika? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And there was a follow-up question for that?
So she's living with the in-laws, then and the husband passes away. So what is her, how long does it last for her mahram with the father-in-law, for example?
Yeah. So her father-in-law is a mahram for her forever. He remains a mahram. The muhramat, yani those who are haram upon you forever, there are two types. One is due to nasab, one is due to sabab. And then from sabab there are different types. So due to nasab is your progeny, your usul and your furu. Usul means your mother, father, their mother, fathers, their mothers and fathers. They're your usul, your grandparents, etc. And your children are your furu. Your children, their children's children, etc. So these are usul and furu. These are nasab and your siblings. They are your mahram. So these are your maharim due to nasab, due to your lineage. And the other one is due to sabab. Sabab means there's a specific reason why so-and-so has become a mahram. For example, in the time of slavery, milk was one of the reasons why someone becomes your mahram, if you own someone. Slavery doesn't exist anymore legally in the places that we know. And there are other reasons like rada'a. Rada'a is when a person has drunk the milk of the same woman as you have. So that person has become your mahram forever. Okay, they are now mahram for each other. They can never marry each other. They are both mahram for each other. And then there is one which is known as musahara, which is relevant to this. Musahara is the hurma that occurs due to nikah and intercourse with another individual. So once a man has consummated his nikah, even if it's without nikah, if they have had intercourse, then that woman, so if a man has had intercourse with a certain female, then her usul and furu become his mahram. And like that, his usul and furu become her mahram. So she can never get married to his father. He can never get married to her mother. She can never get married to his son, if he had a son from another one. Like that, he can never get married to her son, if she had a son from another marriage. Okay, because now they have all become mahram for each other. So the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, they are mahram for you. Whether you are a female or male, your father-in-law, or if you're a male, then your mother-in-law is your mahram now. Okay? And the rules of maharim will be upheld here. The rules of maharim, I did mention before what they can see and what they can uncover. And in there it also says that if there is fear of fitna, then it is better to keep yourself covered as much as you can and don't be in seclusion with that individual. Like a brother and sister who have drank the same milk from the same woman, they are foster milk brothers, we can call them, milk brother and sister. Ridai brother and ridai sister. If there is fear of fitna, then they should not be in seclusion on their own in a house. But if there is no fear of fitna, they are certain there is no fear in either one, then there's no harm because they are mahram of each other, they can never get married with each other. Okay? Tika. And Allah knows best.
Any questions from the audience? The Takbir Tashriq that we start praying from the 9th of Zul-Hajj. I know we pray out loud when we pray with Jamaat. If we, say for example, if we pray namaz with ourselves, do we still have to pray with Takbir out loud or can we pray it like silently?
Takbir Tashriq from the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, Fajr Salah, and until the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, Asr Salah. It is only wajib in a Jamaat Masnoona. So if there is a Jamaat Masnoona, which is in a masjid where 5 times Salah happens, and the Jamaat is wajib to join that congregation is wajib. In that type of a masjid, in that type of a congregation, immediately as the Imam says the second Salam, it is wajib to say the Takbir out loud. Other than that, it's not wajib. Okay? So at home, it is good to, and it's better to say it louder. But if you don't say it or you forget it, there is no sin in that. Okay? That's the Muslim hukum of Takbir al-Tashriq. And Allah knows best. Can a person do 2 sajda sahws? Yeah, if an individual has done sajda sahw and then he has sat in the qa'dah and he has now forgotten whether he recited tashahud or not after the sajda sahw, then yes, he will do sajda sahw again. But if it's for anything prior to that sajda sahw, so when he's doing the sajda sahw, one sajda sahw will be enough for everything before it. Tika? Every error by mistake. But after that, if a wajib has been missed, then he will do sajda sahw again. There is no harm. Tika? It can even be that an individual has done sajda sahw, then recited tashahud, and then he has forgotten. Did I do sajda sahw or did I not do sajda sahw? So he can do sajda sahw again. Okay, so there can be scenarios where an individual in one namaz does more than one sajda sahw.
Mufti, I've got a question. For those performing Hajj, obviously with Saudi they've announced Eid a day, well, they started a month a day before when obviously they're saying they've seen the moon, but obviously they've not seen the moon. What will people doing Hajj do in that situation?
This question was asked to Huzur Sayyiduna Imam Tajul Sharia, Imam Akhtar Raza Khan radiyallahu ta'ala an. And what should happen is that there are many locals in Haramain Sharifain that follow this correct criteria of moon sighting. And with their information, the individual should try his best to return to Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah and just stay there for a moment and leave. His fard will be fulfilled. However, if someone is unable to do that, Huzur Tajul Sharia gave the answer that inshallah their Hajj will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will forgive them. And I cannot say anything further than that. Huzur Tajul Sharia was a mujtahid Mufti of the Hanafi fiqh, and I believe what he has said is the fatwa in the Hanafi madhab, and Allah knows best.
There are many various methods of istikhara mentioned by the Qur'an. One method is using a tasbih with Nadi Ali. What is your opinion on this?
Using a tasbih and reciting Nadi Ali for istikhara is permissible. There is nothing against Sharia in reciting Nadi Ali. Nadi Ali is calling out to Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam and Sayyiduna Ali al-Murtada karramallahu ta'ala wajhul kareem. The words of it, Nadi Aliyam mazhar al-ajaibi tajidhu awnan laka fin nawaib. Nadi Ali, yani call upon Ali, he is the mazhar of the ajaib, and he is the manifestation of wonders. He can make wonders happen, miracles happen. Yani miracles in the meaning of karamat, because he's the greatest wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ummah after Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. So Nadi Aliyam mazhar al-ajaib tajidhu awnan laka. You will find him a help for you. Fin nawaib, in matters of difficulties. Then it says tajidu awna laka fin nawaibi kullu hammi wa ghammin sayanjali bi nubuwatika ya Rasulullah. Every hum and every gham will disappear. Every hum and every gham, yani all stress and pain and difficulties, they will all leave and disappear. Bi nubuwatika ya Rasulullah, through the prophethood of you, O Messenger of Allah, wa bi walayatika ya Ali, ya Ali, ya Ali, and through the walaya, friendship of yours with Allah, O Ali, O Ali, O Ali. So you are calling upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and upon his great Khalifa Sayyiduna Mawla Ali karramallahu ta'ala wajhul kareem. There is no harm in that. Using a tasbih and seeking their help to direct you whether this matter that I have in my mind, should I go ahead with it or not, or guide me in this matter, and the tasbih moves towards the right or towards the left and it guides you. There is no harm in that. There is nothing in the Sharia that forbids and prohibits that. In fact, many of our pious predecessors have mentioned this way of istikhara, and it's also mentioned in A'mal Raza, and therefore there is no harm in using that type of method for istikhara. And Allah knows best.
Can anyone recite Nadi Ali? Do you need ijazah to recite it?
Anyone may recite Nadi Ali. There is no harm in reciting Nadi Ali, but to recite it in specific amounts and for specific purposes, there is more virtue and more safety in seeking permission from a someone who is a practitioner, and he practices, he's an amil of these a'mal. It's better to take their permission. It brings more blessings, and you are using wasila to reach Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, and so it's better to seek permission from a sheikh. But if somebody does recite it without the permission of his sheikh, it is still permissible, it's fine. Tiga? Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
What's the ruling on if I prayed a namaz at home and then there is a Jamaat happening, I've already prayed. Can I pray in that Jamaat, or would I not be able to join it because I've already prayed?
Yeah. Besides the Asr Salah and the Maghrib Salah and the Fajr Salah, those three Salah, besides them, the Zuhr Salah and the Isha Salah, if you come to the masjid and they are performing the Zuhr Salah, you can join. If they are praying the Isha Fard, you can join. But them three you can't. Okay, because there is no Nafl or Sunnah after Fajr. And therefore you will not join because you've prayed. Because when you have already fulfilled your Fard, for you to come in and join in that congregation, you will be in Nafl Salah. The Imam is praying Fard, you can follow him in nafl. So your namaz will be nafl. But because there is no sunnah and no nafl after Fajr Salah, you can't join that congregation. You have to sit on the side and maybe recite Durood Sharif, recite the Quran, or do some other wazifa. And after Asr Salah, there is no sunnah and there is no nafl. And therefore you can't join in the Asr Salah as well. As for the Maghrib Salah, there is sunnah and there is nafl. However, there is no nafl of 3 rakat. And that's why you will not join the Maghrib Salah. Okay, you'll sit on the side, do something else. Or pray your own separate sunnah or nafl. If it doesn't cause fitna, because someone might think that, oh, he has a problem with the imam, that's why he's praying separately. So maybe recite Quran or something else.
So should your intention be that you pray nafl namaz when you join the...
That's right, yes. Okay, because you've already fulfilled your fard, you can't repeat that fard. It's a prescribed worship. You've done it. So now you can just pray nafl after that. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to learn the sharia and act upon it. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from errors and that which causes His displeasure and anger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to be in His shade on the Day of Judgment, protect us from the punishment of the grave, and strengthen our iman and give us death with iman. Ameen bi jahin Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam wa bi rahmatika ya arham.